This is Peter Helland, and on this short little clip, I'm going to call it Exposing the Gatekeepers. We have in our culture a lot of gatekeepers. A gatekeeper is one who guards a special lie that then dominates in the background. It could be political. It could be the lie of Roosevelt seducing the Japanese to attack Pearl Harbor so he could have an excuse to help Joe Stalin. They'll cover everything but that. Or 9/11, they'll cover everything but the actual truth on 9/11. And it's those particular truths around which everything goes. So you're really getting nowhere. The main gate to the truth that will unveil everything is stopped. And in our culture, usually you get into a position of influence by becoming first a gatekeeper. So let's look at a couple gatekeepers that I perceive as gatekeepers. Now, how serious their gatekeeping is, that's left up to you. But we've been talking about the Pope Leo. Does he teach evolution? He's much more conservative than Pope Francis. Pope Francis was a follower of Pierre Teilhard de Chardin, who was a radical evolutionist. The Jesuits are noted for being radical theistic evolutionists. Pope Leo is an Augustinian. We'll see. Hopefully, he's going to uphold the first article of the Apostles' Creed. Now, like I said, when I went to Notre Dame, went there my senior year to visit. I'd been accepted way early. I had a really good resume, and so I got accepted early. And finally, after quite a bit of time, I went to visit Notre Dame. And then I had a sister at St. Mary's, and she liked to be around the smartest people on campus. And she was pretty enough. They had no girls at Notre Dame, and so she could pretty much pick out who she thought was the most intelligent people at Notre Dame, and that's who she would hang with. So when I went to visit Notre Dame, I hung with those guys 2 or 3 days, and they had one mantra that they always said. And the sister knows that mantra to this day. And it was, we are effed up. We don't know why we're effed up. And if you come here, you will get effed up. Well, it got worse than that. And so when I went back home, I told my dad, I can't go there. Well, family tradition, I saw the pressure was on me. I saw no way to get out of it. So I had to go. And first thing, and so I'm thinking, how can I figure out what's messing these guys up? They don't know why they're messed up. Well, on reflection, I kind of have a strong idea why they were messed up. Very strong. Notre Dame, during World War II, yoked up with the Navy. My uncle died a month before Pearl Harbor as a Navy pilot, and there's a big, huge book I donated to the Rockney Gym. On the first page of this book on Notre Dame, talks about my uncle. He was the first casualty of Notre Dame. And then they mention him on the last page. So he was quite famous. My dad's following in his footsteps. And my uncles went to Notre Dame. And I know that Notre Dame changed after World War II. And with Vatican II, people at Notre Dame have told me unofficially that theistic evolution is the official doctrine, teaching at Notre Dame. And that was on purpose. So when I got to Notre Dame, boom, they made me take geology. I told them I didn't want to take it. They made me take it. Okay, so what these guys were saying, the intellectuals, they had no faith. Now, what do we see at Notre Dame? We see Amy Coney Barrett on the Supreme Court. She's a member of the People of Praise, Christian community. That was started by Paul Dessel, a renowned scientist. Okay, so at the core of Notre Dame, at the core of the People of Praise, is a belief in evolution. No, they call it's theistic evolution, but it's evolution. The earth is 14 billion years old. And the people of praise, they emphasize two things mainly that a lot of people do. You need to be baptized in the Holy Spirit, manifesting usually in speaking in tongues. Now, a lot of people see that as irrational, but it's the only avenue they see, because if evolution is true, there cannot be a historical Adam and Eve. That means the flood, that up till Abraham, it's prehistory and it's myth. You have to believe that, and they do. They don't believe it's literal. So, after 3 years, I was completely exhausted. I'm into Friedrich Nietzsche. I'm completely exhausted, and I go, I got to figure out what is the bottom line. Now, I didn't tell myself consciously, I got to figure out the doctrine on creation. But had you asked me the right questions, I would have known. We would have soon discovered that's what I'm after. So when I dropped out and I found out about the creationism movement started by Henry Morris and John Whitcomb, I jumped on that thing right away, and I studied their material, and I was convinced that what I was taught was wrong, and that what they're all being taught is wrong. And so what we have going in America right now, in the Catholic Church, for every 100 people that become Catholic, over 800 are leaving the Catholic Church. Now, that's why Christian Smith, a sociologist at Notre Dame, studied this phenomena. He was trying to figure out, why are they leaving? And he basically said it's because they teach evolution. And they have to decide, am I going to go with evolution? They call it theistic evolution. It's just evolution. Am I going to go with theistic evolution? And that, am I going to go with the church teaches on theistic evolution? Or they're confused. Am I going to go with Adam and Eve? Well, there is no Adam and Eve under theistic evolution, according to the logical mind. The teaching cardinal at Vatican II was Cardinal Ruffini. Ruffini says you have to believe in a historical Adam and Eve, but he believed in the long earth, the old earth. So it's the big elephant in the room. 8 times more people are leaving the Catholic Church than are joining. And they can't admit why. Now, here's an article by Eric Sammons. He's the editor of Crisis magazine. It used to be called Catholics in Crisis. It was started at Notre Dame in the 80s. Michael Novak and Ralph McInerny. Ralph McInerny was very close to E. Michael Jones. They're both strong in supporting Thomas Aquinas' teachings. What's interesting that I read on this, that Crisis magazine got its start at Notre Dame, and it was under the umbrella. It came out of the Brownson Institute. Now, this is Orestes Brownson. My dad lived in Brownson Hall. I heard about Brownson all the time. Orestes Brownson, the last 10 or 15 years of his life, fought evolution. He said the enemy of the church is geology. This idea that the earth is billions or millions of years old, they just have to keep increasing it, is destroying Christianity. Well, that's why they're leaving the church. They can't have faith if Adam and Eve aren't really historical. They could say they're historical. Usually they say they're mythical, but then they may say, well, we believe they're historical. But they will never let go of those 14 billion years. So here's this Eric Sammons, who wrote this article, A Truly Traditionalist Approach to Science Isn't What It's Supposed to Be. Well, here, I don't want to get lost. I'll put the title up here on the show. But here's a paragraph toward the end, which shows you where he's at. In our day, the old age of the universe has been scientifically proven. It is billions of years old. In fact, the well-accepted Big Bang theory, which assumes an old age and explains cosmic evolution, was first formulated by a Catholic priest, Father George Lamontre, and later enthusiastically supported by Pope Pius XII. Arguing for a young earth denies legitimate scientific proofs, which in turn undermines the witness of the church. While Darwinian evolution, which covers biological macroevolution, does not have such scientific backing, cosmic evolution, which points to an old universe, has many strong proofs to support it. So while we are free to reject the Darwinian-based theories, and should, in my opinion, to reject cosmic evolution because it supposedly contradicts the Bible and the Fathers is contrary to the mind of the church. Well, I'll have to believe, to myself at least, and I think others might agree, Eric Sammons is a gatekeeper because he laments. He's the one that wrote an article right about this time lamenting that for every people becoming a Catholic, 8 are leaving. And he said it's a lot worse than that because there's only 10, at most 20% of the Catholics that are even minimally practicing the Catholic faith. So he says there's really only about less, he says 3.8% of Americans are actually Catholic in practice. And he said, we got to do something really drastic. We got to do something. And he's got a whole list of things. What do we got to go back to the Baltimore Catechism? He's come up with all these ideas, and he's not going to let go of 14 billion years. And Christian Smith says that is why they're leaving. And he's at war with Hugh Owens of the Colby Center, who said in an article on Pope Pius X, who came after Pope Pius IX, in an encyclical called Posited, that in his masterpiece, this is 2021, Colby Report. In his masterpiece, Posited, St. Pius X identified the worst heresy in the history of the Church and foresaw the untold damage that this heresy would inflict upon the Church and the world if it remained unchecked. The heresy was modernism, the synthesis of all heresies, and its principal doctrine, wrote St. Pius X, was evolution. Other heresies, he noted, had added, subtracted, or distorted some part of the deposit of faith while leaving most of the faith intact. But evolution-based modernism conceived of the whole world as in a state of continuous evolution and thus abandoned the very notion of immutable truth. On every side, he saw Catholic intellectuals rejecting scriptural inerrancy and the sacred history of Genesis on the grounds that natural science had proven that the Bible contained historical errors and that advances in geology and biology had proven that man had evolved from a one-celled organism through millions of years of the same kinds of natural processes he observed in the present. Vatican I had already anathematized the proposition that, quote, the progress of the sciences demands that the Catholic doctrine of creation be recast. But St. Pius X saw that the ranks of Catholic intelligentsia holding that error continued to swell, so he renewed the anathema in his own name. So the elephant in the room is the Catholic hatred in the past, and it's changing a bit, for six-day fundamentalist. Like I said before, Mark Knoll came to Notre Dame, and I just saw a book review of one of his, and he brings out that Mark Knoll would kind of lose it emotionally. He hated six-day creationists. He called the scandal of the evangelical mind. He said he couldn't stand people, Christians, that upheld the six-day creation position. Yeah, and he became great at Notre Dame. And I'm saying Mark Knoll, in my opinion, is a classic gatekeeper, because that's the truth that you have to have in today's world. That evolution, the theory of evolution, has no facts. They have the appearance of facts, and when you break through the appearance of them, there's nothing there. It's a mirage. We have the witness of God through Moses that he created the world in 6 days. And the witness that we have that the world started 14 billion years ago does not exist. It's just magic and witchcraft, which I've said that's kind of what science is in that area. Because when science tries to say, well, this is how things started, There is no scientific method for that position. They can't say that, but they do. And for some reason, the Catholic hierarchy caves. And a good example is Mark Noll dedicates his book, The Theological Crisis of the Civil War. He dedicates that book to Eugene Genovese. And Eugene Genovese wrote The Mind of the Master Class, in which he says the mind of the Southerners, especially the theologians, was brilliant. Nobody came close to their mind. And it's talking about one time, Genovese, I think he's at Wheaton College, and he's talking to the evangelicals. He says, you guys are a bunch of wussies. You guys are nothing compared to Thornwell, James Thornwell, Robert Louis Dabney. He said, those guys are men. They actually have theology. And they go, well, what about their pro-slavery? Genovese goes, well, that's a problem, but it's a very minor problem because in everything else, they are really strong. And of course, I think Genovese just said that because the Mind of the Master Class was basically aimed at that the Southerners' position on slavery was airtight. But the persecution, the intense, radical, fanatical persecution on a six-day creationist and on somebody who holds the traditional view of the master-slave relationship, which even Cardinal Dulles of the Catholic Church took the traditional against a judge of the Ninth Circuit, John Noonan, and he says, no, Catholic Church has never changed its position on slaveholding. Slaveholding is not a sin if done properly. It's always been the position, but that is not the mind of people in academia. They're gatekeepers there. They won't let you into the real scriptures, like Jesus said about lawyers. They won't let you in. And you got to break through in your search for truth and detect the gatekeepers, because that's oftentimes the problem. So hopefully this is helpful.